Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Corey Lyon Folsom. Corey is a relationship and love coach and author of the book Soul Statements, A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. He has, I'm going to let him talk about this part of it, but he has a really interesting background in how he actually got into um, doing what he does now. So, welcome to the show, Corey. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks, Jill. I'm happy to be here.
So you want to tell the audience about your life as an Aboriginal skills professional guide?
Certainly. So when I was a young person, teenager, I uh, was just really entranced and enthralled with the natural environment. We grew up in Maine, and I could walk out our back door into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of forest and meadows, and there was a river. And so I just spent a lot of time just wandering around. Nowadays, they call those free range children. Back then, it was just kids. So, and I got really into, I mean, I'm 14, 15 years old, and I'm like really into bird watching and trying to identify birds by their sounds. And so, and then later animal tracking. And so I just was soaking up the natural world, and it really, I don't know, built some kind of bond or reawakened some ancestral bond within me. And so later, as a young man, so 20 years old or so, I became an Aboriginal skills instructor, which was, there was a school, it was in rural northwestern New Jersey, and people would come for a week at a time, and they would learn fire without matches, building shelter with your bare hands, tanning hides, wild edible plants, and on and on and on. And it was, excuse me, it was just a really fun, high learning curve environment. I stayed there 3 years, and I just got to get a lot better at all these various day-to-day skills that ancient peoples had, because I'm teaching it all the time. And then from there, I bounced way over to southern Idaho and became an instructor in a program, 21 days, young people, teenagers, early recovery from drugs and alcohol. But it was based, the life way, the way we traveled was based on kind of a nomadic hunter-gatherer type existence. So we had to make fire without matches. We got one blanket in the summer and two army blankets in the winter. And we had a little bundle of food about this big to last us a week. And so we just did the stuff, and a lot of wild edible plants. Those came in very handy. And
Yeah.
but out of that, here I am leading this group of 6 or 8 wilderness novices, and not necessarily fully bought into even being there. And so I got a lot more respect for forces larger than me, the weather, darkness, topography, seasons, and there was a lot of unexpected. It seemed like there was always something unexpected happening. And so uh, we had to become creative and problem solving and working through the unexpected, and challenges that we weren't planning for. And so one of the things I learned is people's assets can become, I mean, people's differences can become assets just depending on the situation. And so maybe someone is not so participatory in hauling water or finding our way through something, but maybe at another time they have the best idea that anyone's ever thought of and how to handle a given situation. So we just learn to work through frustration by being human with each other. And I used to tell them, I'm not here to make it harder. This is hard enough. I'm here to be your ally and just figure out how we can get this all done together. And so we learned that these obstacles and these frustrations were great teachers that showed us where we need to work in how to maybe more skillfully express our needs and issues that come up. And so asking for help, that was a big one that we got to learn.
That's fascinating. I love I love the idea of, it's almost like Boy Scouts on steroids, you know, the living off the land and challenging people to really go inside and figure out who they are in this process, because you can't go through an experience like that without really coming face to face with who you are. What do you fear? What do you excel at? You may never have really realized that you're you're amazing at problem solving in a specific way, because it's all about problem solving. When you're out there and you have to find food and you have to figure out how you're going to make shelter or use what's around you, and becoming aware of stuff. People, we go through life and, everything's always seems to be the same, but it never is. But we just become blind to the things that are different in our environments.
Mhm.
And when you're faced with having to use what's in your environment, it makes you have to really sharpen your observational skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that actually wasn't part of the program, but I just instituted because I felt like it, was I would have them in the middle of the day when we're stopped, we're resting, maybe we're having some kind of meal, is to send them off for an hour by themselves, like spokes on a wheel, just go. Just don't stay within an earshot so I can, when I hoot, time to come back, you'll hear it. But I wanted them to be able to find a little spot where they could just sit down, be by themselves, and just think or meditate or write in their journal. And they always had to have at least a page in their journal written every day. And that was often the time they used to do that. And so I just wanted them to feel that they were just out in this amazing land, and that their concerns, their worries, their resources, their skills, they just, wherever you go, there you are. So they could just be alone with themselves and take a little bit of an inventory and mull some things over. And so I've just always been a fan of that kind of quiet, alone, still time by yourself. And that's something that's very useful to me to this day. I need my alone time.
I feel the same way. And I just, in my mind's eye, I can see them sitting out there connecting with the earth. You're grounding, you're getting the energy from the earth running through your body. You're feeling the elements on your skin. You're connected with the real world, not this world that we've created where there's all this stuff that's in our periphery. But when you're out there by yourself, it just like time slows down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it allows for so much more introspection. And
Yeah, absolutely. And the next program that I went and got to be part of, I did that for 3 years. Well, actually 3 years intensively, but on and off for 9 years. And that was in Southern Utah. And that was a 6-week program. And on day 19, we would in the evening set people off on a dirt road, one by one, 45 minutes apart. And all they could have is one water bottle and a poncho in case it rained. And so they weren't carrying a flashlight, radio, nothing. And they had to walk on this sandy dirt road. And I would have glow sticks here and there where you might confuse the wash for the road, so they could keep on the right track from time to time. So I would have this route laid out, and they would go up to 25 miles, usually somewhere between 20 and 25 miles that night. So, and they knew it was long. They didn't know exactly how far, just that we wanted them in by sunrise. And in order to do that, they had to keep walking. So, but that was spectacular. You know, the hours just, they don't exactly roll by. You know, you're trudging, so your body has something to do. And they knew that if it felt hard under their feet, they're still on the road. If it feels soft, we have to figure something out, get back. But they had this time to really have just anything and everything come up, and all these voices in their head, and these uh, competing voices. So it's like a mini vision quest. So just to walk all night in the dark by yourself, and it's just incredible, the change from the day before to the day after. People were much more self-assured, much more purposeful.
They ever talk about aliens?
No, they would ask about them, but no.
It's kind of the thing in some parts of Utah that there's, hold on, it's a different podcast. So what are you doing now? I know you've written this book and it's really fantastic. I actually bought it and I'm reading it. It's a great premise for a
Thank you.
place to start.
So yeah, I love talking about my book. This is why I'm here. But I'm also a love and relationship coach, which that experience really what coalesced my thinking into writing the book, because uh, I heard myself saying some of the same things to different clients. So I thought, well, that must be really valuable. They're getting great benefit from it. And maybe I'll start combining some of this stuff. I'll write a blog. And then I hired a writing coach, and she suggested it be a book. And so I worked with her for a couple of years, and altogether 4 years of effort. And it was finally came to fruition. So the book's called Soul Statements because I realized how important it is at that moment of confusion, or when that pesky critical voice is telling you an old unhelpful story, that in that moment you can pre-decide what to think, what to insert in that place instead. So to try to calibrate your surface thoughts with your inner knowing is what actually happens. So uh, because I'm a firm believer that answers are in your center. So the process really begins with just being quiet and still, and deciding perhaps what you're made of, and where your strengths are, and being honest about where you could improve. And so that time spent with your own inner knowing, your soul, you can develop what you value, and you get a greater sense of your own value. And so when that pesky voice starts shouting in your ear, you can say, oh, yeah, I remember that. This is what I used to think. And what's really true about me is, and then here comes the soul statement. So it could be something like, I can call upon the grit inside me, or I have grit inside me. Oh, if you think you can't, maybe you're not up for something, you're like, you know what, I've got grit. Yeah. Or my soul knows what to do, or my heart is a trusted guide. And so you have these ready-made statements to just give your brain a better thought, which then leads to the next thought being a better thought, because it's colored by what you just declared. And ideally, the soul statement will work better the more you have them. You can feel the emotion of it. You want to have your cells light up and say, yes, we agree. Or, when you say something like, there is a strength in my center, you want to feel it in your bones. And that's what will really make it really effective. And so it's about giving yourself a little break from your normal inner dialogue and inserting something more resourced, more powerful, more empowering in that moment. And then you can proceed. Maybe you get a little braver to use your voice and speak up for yourself, or maybe you get quieter because you don't have to argue for some point. You just know who you are and what you are, what you're made of. And you're like, I have self-assurance. I can let this other person have their opinion, and that's okay. Because I know who I am. I know what I'm made of. And so that's a soul statement.
I love them. I started working on some.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's nice to have them handy. I like to write them on like mirrors and surfaces that I can remove them when I need to, but because when those negative voices come up in your head, if you're just glancing around, then it reminds you to go and no, I'm not going to think about that thing. I'm just going to repeat this and I'm going to let my brain work on it because your brain needs bubble gum and it will work to make whatever you're thinking a reality in your life. So if you're ruminating on the bad things that are happening to you, you're going to be more aware of the bad things that are coming around you because that's what your brain is focused on. But if you grab hold of these power statements or their soul statements that are identity
Mhm.
forming statements, it makes your brain have to prove them true.
That's right. And, I heard Tony Robbins one time say, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right.
Yeah.
So, and that percolated in me. And that was part of the genesis of soul statements. Like, well, why don't we just declare what's right at those moments? And as a type of affirmation, I love the soul statements because it's present time truth. It's not a desired future state.
Yeah.
It's true right now. It's always true, you know, and and so you're not having to go somewhere or move into something, but you can feel the truth and the rightness of it in real time, in the immediacy.
And it's kind of an anchor to grab hold of when you start to waver, and everybody wavers from time to time. It's like things come along and it's really easy to let your brain just go off on the negative Nancy train. But if you have this anchor to grab hold of, it can pull you back instead of wandering down into the tulies that are going to take you
Yeah,
someplace you don't want to go.
exactly so. And the thing is, I said a couple soul statement examples just now, and
Mhm.
and I have a client who recently, she just read the book, and she just has one soul statement that just applies for all circumstances, and
Mhm.
that works for her, and that's great. So there's not one way to do it. I'm more tailored to the situation, but she found her soul statement, which is I am enough. And
Yeah.
that applies to everything where she might feel less than. It's like, you know what? I'm enough. I am enough. And she can feel the power of that, the truth of it, and life gets a little better. You can be a little more empowered to do the thing that's best for you.
And it works in all situations.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that soul statement.
Mhm.
I've used it myself for a number of years, and when you're faced with something, a challenge with another human being, and you start to doubt yourself, you just remind yourself, "I am enough," and it
Mhm.
allows them to be enough too.
That's right.
It's not
Yeah.
just all about you; it's about those that you're interacting with. When you accept confidence in your being, who you were created to be. And we are not all the same. Everybody is unique and everybody came here for a specific purpose. And when we stop having to like be everything for everybody, we allow everybody else to be themselves too and to share their specific gifts.
Yeah, that's right. And I think when you're in what I found is when you're in touch with a soul state or a soul statement that gets you in touch with the truth of your soul, that you are less, people get less argumentative. They can just allow present time to be what it is. And so I like to say, I think I mentioned in the book, that being uncomfortable is okay. Reacting badly, not okay. But it's all right to just hold some tension and just be a container and maybe if you've done something inappropriate, you could ask for a redo, say, you know what, I don't like how I said that. I'm wondering if I could just start over, or whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
And it allows people to give you some grace and some
Mhm, mhm,
space instead of trying to have to hide what that was. I think the move that I've been seeing towards a a more sober community, people are moving towards sobriety. And maybe it's just because I'm seeing it in the people that I interact with, that it's kind of refreshing. The whole alcohol and drugs movement, it kept people from being their real selves. It's like a little prison that
mhm,
they crawl into, and it made it so that other people couldn't enjoy them too, because they were so busy trying to hide themselves, maybe even from themselves.
mhm.
But it's interesting to see how that movement's going.
Yeah, indeed so. And I love that, give yourself grace. And it reminds me of another technique. And if you practice these techniques enough, they're not techniques anymore. It's just what you
Yeah.
do. But that is to, when you feel your heart, clench up or feel contract or get scared or whatever the case may be, if something hurts your heart, instead of using your words and saying something um, that you might have to deal with later, something critical or worse. Uh, it's okay to just acknowledge your own heart. Say, "Oh, I see that you're hurt just now." Okay, and there's nothing to do. It's just an acknowledgement. And
Mhm.
so you just have a little breath. In NVC, nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg said that those times where we are upset are the times we forget our own lovableness. And so if we give our heart an acknowledgement and take a breath, then we can just, there again, we're more centered and can speak or act with intentionality versus just fly off the handle. So I just found that so useful for me, and my clients really love to just give yourself a little empathy, a little compassion right then, real time, before responding to anything.
Yeah, the whole checking in and
Yeah.
and being aware of what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a moment that you only have the moment that you're in at any given time. Only now exists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Take it, treasure it. It's okay. You're you're allowed, for lack of a better word, to to just embrace the moment, and in giving yourself time to recognize what's happening, feel your heart.
Mm-hmm.
If something happens to you, you don't have to immediately have a reaction.
Yeah,
You can decide how you're going to react.
that's right. That's right. And we can decide how we're going to think. Uh, I saw a cartoon a long time ago, and it was something happened with these kids, and that might have been The Simpsons or something. And the dad says, "Well, this is how we're going to remember this thing," And I'm like, "Yeah, why not? We could do that with ourselves. You know what? Because we're meaning making creatures. We make meaning from everything, and so why not make it mean something um, something more powerful and more true about how you're able to handle stuff versus anything else." So yeah.
In a way, you can kind of time travel when you do that, in that you can decide how you're going to remember an event or things that have happened in your past. It's a great way to get over trauma.
Mhm.
Um, and everybody remembers things differently because everybody experiences things differently. And a lot of the traumas that everybody goes through in childhood are based on memories of a very young human being who's not fully developed, usually interacting with a younger person who is their parent. As you get older, your perspective changes a lot. I'm sure when you look at your sons and if they have families and you recognize that, wow, they're just not that old and they're having babies and they're raising these children, and these children are going to have problems with their parents because everybody has problems with their parents. But you can change those memories of your life as a child with your parent into one that serves you better.
Mhm.
And then it will give you a better relationship with that parent as is old aging, and it will help you to navigate life better.
Mhm.
Just like you're no longer the victim, you can be the hero.
Yeah. Well, I like to say that when my life really changed
Mhm.
is when I started being honest to myself, honesty on the inside, and about what my motivation might have been for a given thing.
Mhm.
Do not think, well, I was trying my best, or I was trying to do this. I wanted it to happen this way. It's like, yeah, no, you didn't. You were scared of whatever, or you were trying to work something. And it's like, just be honest. And so I didn't have to say, it was kind of cool because I didn't have to say it to anybody, but I could be honest with me and be like,
Mhm.
okay, that's not really the person that I thought I was. And so I had to move my move the way I did things to be more in line with my own self-image, what I thought of me. Like, well, I'm an upstanding person. I'm a good person. I'm a person of integrity. It's like, well, there's these places maybe you weren't. And so I had to, you know, um, adjust in a good way to be the person who I thought I was. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that kind of self-awareness, that just that self-honesty was probably the most helpful shift in my life.
It keeps you from having to feel like you're pretending.
Yeah.
When you lie to yourself, you even have to pretend to yourself
Mhm.
because you're just
Yeah.
not that person.
Yeah. My friend Kelly Bryson, who wrote Don't Be Nice, Be Real, he calls
Yeah.
it the nice guys, GUISE.
Yeah. I like that because that's all it is. Nobody is nobody is always the person that they bring forward and put their disguise on.
Mhm. And
And
another
you,
thing just in the last few years that I found super helpful for me
Mhm.
was fasting from complaints. I when I heard the concept and started to do it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of complaints that come out of my mouth. This is crazy. And so learning to, stop that was just a big deal too. And then you come off as less critical to other people because you are. So I'm a big fan of fasting from complaints, especially with in a couple, an intimate couple.
Mhm.
Let's not say any complaint about my beloved. See if you can do that for a month. And I the pro version is to, when you mess up, day one starts over again.
Yeah, I've been married for 28 years. I can see how that works.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
used to call it don't push each other's buttons.
Right. Don't poke the bear.
Yeah, don't poke the bear. It's not going to help you. And if you're going to argue about something, make sure it's the hill you want to die on, because
Hmm.
every battle you fight is going to leave scars in that
Hmm.
relationship.
Hmm. Right. 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 And then I like to say that if you, to a couple, that if you cannot argue without wounding, you shouldn't
Mm.
even argue,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And you need to come at it from not being the victim. There have been times when I've like gone to my husband and said, hey, what I'm going to say to you is totally from the victim point of view. I'm just going to say it. and then we'll have a normal discussion about it.
Mhm.
And that gives him off the hook. He's like, okay, she's just going to vent for a minute. And I don't have to defend myself because she wants to be the victim now. It's not my job to be the victim in this conversation. We're just going to let her be the victim for a minute. And then we'll solve the problem.
Right. Defined roles. I like it.
Yeah. If you work on a relationship in terms of recognizing what the outcome you want to grow old with this person, you need to figure out how you're going to make the relationship be fun and interesting and not hurtful to each other, because everybody's got flaws.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. And and it's somewhat, I remember one of a co-instructor taught me this concept of, if God wanted to take you out, you would have already been gone. So what might that mean? It might mean that you have work to do. You have something to contribute. And so, maybe I'd better get going because I'm here. Let's not waste it. This is just a wondrous place to be, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people fight so hard to be here. You see these people, not doing well at all, but yet, just breathing air and seeing some sunlight can be enough.
Yeah. Yeah. They fight hard to stay, even to the end.
Right.
So how do people work with you? I know you're both a coach and an author, but on the coaching side, do you do one-on-one couples or do you do groups? How does that look?
I everything's on the phone or Zoom, and so Zoom typically for international people, but yeah, I talk to people one-on-one. I talk to couples, and mostly the people that come to me one-on-one,
Mhm.
they fit they're in a certain group. So they're
Okay.
aged from say 35 to 70, single woman, and she wants to get more prepared to be in a belovedship, a relationship,
Mhm.
and she doesn't want to have the same crap as she had in the last one or the one before that. And so she's like, I want to do this differently. How can I prepare myself to meet someone special and this time do it well and create something lasting and fun. So I hear that a lot. Yeah. And so the people
Yeah,
find me on my website, corerelationship.com. And I used to have my phone number on there, but no one ever called. They'll email, so that's fine. My email's there. There's a page about the book to order the book, and I'm spending my time talking about the book because these are my favorite subjects, and I'm really privileged to work with some people and help them move their own lives forward.
that's awesome. And we'll be sure to put the links to both your website and for people to order your book, which again, I already purchased and I'm reading it. I think it's fantastic. So
Thank you. Thank you. And if I could have one thought or take away something I want to leave each person with, is that each one of us, I'm talking about each person, that you can call up the best part of you in a moment, and then the next right action is obvious when you're connected to what you value and your value.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me, Corey. This has been an awesome conversation.
Oh, thanks, Jill.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the U World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.